Hello friends, and welcome to Bible Time with Pastor Zach. My name is Zach Landis. I'm the senior pastor at the First United Methodist Church in Howe, Texas. And I want to welcome you to this time that we are going to be spending in the Bible together. Our task for this week is chapter 17 of the Gospel of Matthew. And if you've been along this journey with us, you know that we are reading the Gospel of Matthew chapter by chapter as we go through the entire book. And so if this is your first time here, I want to welcome you to this video and also encourage you that this is a part of a playlist, and so you can go back and see all of the other past episodes just in case you want to catch up. But we are in chapter 17 right now. As chapter 17 opens up, it's Jesus' transfiguration at the very beginning. So let's go ahead and dive in. So this first passage we're going to read is Matthew 17 verses 1 through 13, and this is the transfiguration of Jesus. And I'm going to be reading from the CEB translation of the Bible, just in case you're curious. 6 days later, Jesus took Peter, James, and John his brother, and brought them to the top of a very high mountain. He was transfigured in front of them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking with Jesus. Peter reacted to all of this by saying to Jesus, "Lord, it's good that we're here. If you want, I'll make 3 shrines, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." While they were still speaking, look, a bright cloud overshadowed them. A voice from the cloud said, "This is my son whom I dearly love. I am very pleased with him. Listen to him." Hearing this, the disciples fell on their faces, filled with awe. But Jesus came and touched them. "Get up," he said. "Don't be afraid." When they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus commanded them, "Don't tell anybody about the vision until the human one is raised from the dead." The disciples asked, "Then why do the legal experts say that Elijah must come first?" Jesus responded, "Elijah does come first and will restore all things. In fact, I tell you that Elijah has already come, and they didn't know him. But they did to him whatever they wanted. In the same way, the human one is also going to suffer at their hands." Then the disciples realized he was telling them about John the Baptist. And so this transfiguration story is a really well-known story of Jesus, where he goes up with a few of his disciples, kind of the inner circle of the disciples, with Peter, James, and John. And they're going up to the top of the mountain where Jesus is transfigured, and Jesus is physically changed, and his face shines like the sun, and they say that his clothes become dazzling white. And so this kind of a moment of knowing that Jesus is the Messiah, it's a sign that of who he is, and he's showing his disciples that. And then also we get appearances by Moses and Elijah, and Peter's kind of freaked out by this, and he thinks this is such an amazing thing that even though they've seen a lot of amazing things up until this point with the miracles and the teachings and all the things that Jesus has done, like Peter kind of just freaks out, and he just wants to kind of stay there. And he says, "I'll even build you and Moses and Elijah these little shrines or these little shelters that you can stay in, and we'll just stay right here because this is awesome," right? So he's kind of having this freak out moment. And then on top of that, God's voice comes from this cloud from heaven and says that Jesus is his son, and that he's well pleased, and that he loves him. And so it's this kind of awe-inspiring moment, and the disciples are kind of one in fear, but also in awe of what they have just witnessed and experienced. And so it's kind of an amazing experience, and I think that for the disciples, it's especially for Peter, it's where he wants to stay. He's trying to build some shelters there, and he doesn't want that moment to pass. But Jesus knows that it must pass, and he tells his disciples to get up and to not be afraid. And when they do, it's just Jesus. All of the other things are gone. And then they start going down the mountain, because Jesus knew that mountaintop experience. And if you've ever had a mountaintop experience, you know that that's kind of code word or kind of meaning like it's a great experience. It's something where you felt so close with God, or so such an amazing experience, and an experience that you wouldn't want to leave. And that's kind of where Peter was. But Jesus knew that going down the mountain, going back down to the people, going back down to his task and kind of his ministry is what is most important. Then I always kind of have wondered why Jesus, especially at this moment, and then also other moments like healing stories or other miracles, he tells his people and his disciples and the people that are following him, don't say a word. Don't spread the news about this. And we know it does, and we know it does spread because more and more people are coming to Jesus and just kind of wanting to figure out who he is and see what he's doing. But it makes me wonder if he's actually wanting them to be quiet, or if he's just telling them that just so that they would say something. Like I know I can get my kids to say something to my wife or their mom, and if I say, hey, this is a secret, don't tell anybody, by golly, they're going to tell somebody that because they just aren't very good at keeping secrets or something like that. So I wonder if it's something like that, or if it actually was something that they, in this particular case, didn't say until later, till after Jesus was raised from the dead, and that they had that undeniable proof of who Jesus was, and because the Gospels are not being written as Jesus is walking alongside Jesus. They're written years later after Jesus' death and resurrection. And so it's interesting to see exactly what that is, but I don't think we ever would know. It's just a curious thing of how many times Jesus says, don't tell anybody, but yet the word gets out. All right, so the next passage we're going to jump into is right after that. It's the healing of a boy that was demon-possessed. This is Matthew chapter 17. This is verses 14 through 21, and I'm going to have you read the rest of the 17th chapter on your own. I want you to do that kind of as homework or on your own reading, just to kind of get through it. But this is 14 through 21. When they came to the crowd, a man met Jesus. He knelt down before him, saying, Lord, show mercy to my son. He is epileptic and suffers terribly, for he often falls into the fire or the water. I brought him to your disciples, but they could not heal him. Jesus answered, You faithless and crooked generation, how long will I be with you? How long will I put up with you? Bring the boy here to me. When Jesus spoke harshly to the demon, and it came out of the child, who was healed from that time on. Then the disciples came to Jesus in private and said, Why couldn't we throw the demon out? Because you have little faith, he said. I assure you that if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, Go from here to there, and it will go. Therefore, there will be nothing that you can't do. So, the second passage of a demon-possessed boy is kind of another healing miracle of Jesus, but it's also one where he's kind of scolding or kind of teaching his disciples about what it means to have a strong faith, and scolding them because they have a weak faith. That this man had brought this demon-possessed boy to the disciples, and they weren't able to cure him, and so they have to go to Jesus in order to do it. And so while there is a healing part here, it's also kind of a scolding of his disciples about having a weak faith. And we know oftentimes through the Gospels that the disciples are struggling. They don't quite get everything all at once. They're not, able to really live out into what Jesus is trying to teach them to do. They might for a second, but then they falter, like Peter walking on the water. He did walk on the water. It wasn't just Jesus who walked on water, but then he had doubts. And so sometimes we kind of have doubts too, because we don't have those miracles. We don't really see somebody coming in and throwing demons out. We don't see these huge feeding miracles. But there are other miracles that we can see and other things that are happening in the world. We just have to pay attention to it. And we just have to have faith that we can do amazing things with our faith and with God's help because of our faith. Now, can we actually say to a mountain, be moved from here to there? Probably not. But we can still do some amazing things. And so that's kind of what I think this part teaches us, is reminding us to have some strong faith in Jesus, because we know who Jesus is from this first part with this transfiguration. We have that proof, that undeniable proof that Jesus is God's Son. He is the Messiah. And we should have faith, a strong faith, that because of what Jesus has done for us and what Jesus continues to do through us and the power of the Holy Spirit, we can do amazing things. And so I think that's the lesson for us this week. So that's what I have. That's all we're covering. And so I do want you to read the rest of this chapter. It's just a few verses. There's 2 different little sections. So I encourage you to read that on your own for your own scripture reading and devotional this week. But stay tuned in the coming weeks for some more episodes as we continue our journey through the Gospel of Matthew. So thank you for joining me for Bible Time with Pastor Zach, and I hope you have a great week.